That night, my son didn't just raise his voice. He erased me. In a restaurant full of strangers under bright lights and quiet music, he pointed at me, the woman who carried him for 9 months, the woman who worked herself sick to feed him, and said words that still echo in my chest. My wife does not lie. I remember the sound of his voice more than the words themselves. Firm, certain, final. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. A mother can give her entire life to her child and still be replaced. My name is Emily Miller. I am 58 years old. And this is the story of how I lost my son. Not in death, but in silence, loyalty, and a woman who taught him that love has conditions. That night, the accusation was $800. But what truly disappeared was the bond one thought nothing could break. My name is Emily Miller. Before I became a grandmother, before I became a problem, before I became someone people whispered about, I was just a girl with simple dreams and tired hands. I was born in a small town where houses leaned on each other like old friends and people measured life by seasons, not success. My mother used to say, "We are not rich, Emily, but we are decent." That sentence shaped my entire life. I learned early that love meant sacrifice. That silence was strength. That a woman's pain was something to be swallowed, not shared. I was 19 when I became pregnant. The boy who promised forever disappeared the moment responsibility knocked on his door. There was no dramatic goodbye. No apology. Just absence. One day he was there. And then he wasn't. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, holding my stomach, whispering to someone who couldn't hear me yet. "It's just you and me now." And I meant it. People looked at me differently after that. Single mother. Poor choices. A burden. But when Michael was born, none of that mattered. I still remember his cry, loud, angry, alive. The nurse placed him on my chest, and in that moment, fear turned into purpose. I didn't know how I would survive. But I knew why I would. From that day on, my life stopped belonging to me. I worked wherever someone would hire me. Cleaning offices at dawn. Waiting tables at night. Folding laundry until my fingers cracked in winter. There were days I skipped meals so Michael wouldn't notice there was less food. When he was sick, I stayed awake all night counting his breaths. When he cried, I blamed myself. When he smiled, I felt rich. He grew fast. Children always do when you're too busy trying to survive. I never dated again. Not because I didn't want companionship, but because I didn't trust anyone near my son. Every decision I made had one question behind it. Is this good for Michael? When he started school, I stood outside the gate longer than necessary, watching him disappear into a crowd. My heart did that thing it always did, stretched itself between pride and fear. At night, after he slept, I used to sit at the kitchen table and imagine his future. College, a good job, a warm home, a family that would never abandon him. I promised myself something back then. If I give him everything, he will never feel alone. That promise followed me for decades. Michael was a good boy. Polite, intelligent, gentle. Teachers praised him, neighbors admired him. People used to say, "You raised him well." Those words kept me going. When he graduated high school, I cried harder than he did. Not because I was sad, but because I finally believed my sacrifices meant something. College was expensive. I took extra shifts, sold my old jewelry, lived smaller so he could dream bigger. I never complained. A mother doesn't count the cost. She counts the outcome. Michael called me every Sunday back then. Sometimes just 5 minutes. Sometimes longer. But always enough to make me feel included. Then things slowly changed. It wasn't sudden. It never is. The calls became shorter. Then less frequent. Then replaced by texts. Busy, he said. Work, he said. I believed him. Mothers always do. That's when Jessica entered his life. First, I was happy for him. She seemed confident, modern, very sure of herself. She didn't look at the world the way I did, softly, but I told myself times change, people change. The first time I met her, she smiled without warmth. Her eyes scanned my clothes, my house, my furniture, as if measuring something invisible. I ignored the feeling in my stomach. At dinner, she corrected Michael when he spoke. Interrupted him. Made jokes at my expense, light ones but sharp. "You're very traditional, Emily," she said once, laughing. I smiled back because that's what women like me were taught to do. As months passed, Michael changed. He became quieter around me, defensive, as if loving his mother required permission now. When they announced their engagement, I hugged him tightly. Too tightly. He gently pulled away. "Mom, you're squeezing," he said. I laughed, but something inside me already knew. At the wedding, I sat in the second row, not the front. Jessica's family filled those seats. I wore the dress I saved months for. Michael barely looked at me. When he said his vows, he never once mentioned family. I clapped. I smiled. I went home alone. After that, I saw him less and less. Holidays became complicated. Visits felt formal. Conversations felt filtered. And slowly, I became a guest in my own son's life. Still, I told myself, this is normal. Children grow. Mothers step back. I didn't know then that stepping back was only the beginning. I didn't know that one accusation, one dinner, one sentence spoken without hesitation would erase everything I had been. And I certainly didn't know that the hardest part of my life was not raising my son alone. It was learning how to live. After he chose not to see me at all, I used to believe love was something that grew, that if you watered it with patience, kindness, and time, it would deepen and become unbreakable. I was wrong. Some loves don't grow. They replace. After Michael got married, my role in his life didn't disappear overnight. It faded. Quietly. Politely. Like something people remove without making noise. Jessica didn't forbid him from seeing me. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she made my presence feel unnecessary. When I called, Michael would answer with a distracted voice, as if he was already halfway somewhere else. "Hey, Mom." "Yeah, I'm busy right now." Busy became his favorite word. When I visited, Jessica controlled the atmosphere without raising her voice. She decided when we ate, what we talked about, how long I stayed. She corrected my stories, laughed at my memories, and reminded me, gently, repeatedly, that times had changed. Once, while I was telling a childhood story about Michael, she smiled and said, "That's not how he remembers it." Michael nodded. That hurt more than an argument ever could. I started choosing my words carefully, shortening my visits, dressing more neatly, bringing gifts I couldn't afford. I wanted to prove I wasn't a burden. I wanted to be acceptable. But no matter how small I made myself, it was never enough. Jessica had a way of turning simple things into quiet humiliations. If I cooked, she added seasoning afterward. If I cleaned, she re-cleaned when I left. If I offered advice, she smiled and said, "We'll handle it our way." Michael watched it all and said nothing. That silence, his silence, became the loudest thing in my life. The first time I realized something was truly wrong was during a holiday dinner. I had arrived early, hoping to help. Jessica looked surprised, not pleased, just surprised. "Oh, I didn't know you were coming this early," she said. I stood there, coat still on, holding a bag of groceries. "I thought I'd help," I replied. She paused, then smiled. "We already have everything planned." I sat on the couch while she moved around the kitchen like a director on a stage. Michael passed by me, kissed my cheek quickly, and went back to his phone. Dinner felt like a performance. Conversations were light, rehearsed, careful. I laughed when appropriate, nodded when needed. At some point, Jessica said, "We don't really do things the old-fashioned way." Everyone laughed. I smiled, but inside something folded in on itself. After that night, the invitations stopped coming naturally. I had to ask, to check, to wait. "Let me see what Jessica says," Michael would reply, as if my presence required approval. Still, I never complained. I told myself, this is marriage. This is normal. But deep down, I felt something else growing. Not anger, not jealousy, but displacement. I was being slowly edited out of my own story. Then came the dinner that changed everything. Michael invited me to a restaurant. Just the three of us. He sounded formal on the phone. "We need to talk," he said. Those words still make my chest tighten. The restaurant was expensive. Too expensive. I felt out of place the moment I walked in. White tablecloths. Soft lighting. People dressed better than me. Jessica arrived perfectly put together. Calm. Confident. We ordered. Small talk floated on the surface like it always did. Then Jessica placed her purse on the table. She opened it and looked at me. Her eyes were steady, cold. "Emily," she said softly, "did you take the money from my bag?" For a moment, I didn't understand the question. "What money?" I asked. She sighed as if disappointed. $800. I had it before. Now it's gone. The table went silent. My heart began to pound. "I didn't touch your bag," I said. Jessica turned to Michael. "I know I had it," she said. "And your mother was the only one near it." Michael looked at me. Not with confusion. Not with doubt. But with judgment. "Mom, did you?" That was the moment something inside me broke. I felt small. Exposed. Accused. "I would never steal from you," I whispered. Jessica leaned back. "I just want honesty." Then Michael said the sentence that ended everything. "My wife does not lie." The restaurant seemed to disappear. All I could hear was blood rushing in my ears. In that moment, my entire life, every sacrifice, every night awake, every tear, was erased by one sentence. I stood up slowly. People were watching. I picked up my coat. "I hope you find your money," I said quietly. And I walked out. Michael didn't follow me. He didn't call that night. Or the next day. Or the day after that. What followed was not an argument. It was silence. And silence is where the deepest pain lives. Silence doesn't arrive all at once. Creeps in. It starts with unanswered calls. Then unread messages. Then days that pass without your name being spoken by the people who once needed you for everything. After that night at the restaurant, I waited. First, I told myself Michael just needed time. That emotions were high. That he would call when things cooled down. A mother always believes in repair. I replayed the scene over and over in my head. The way Jessica looked at me. The certainty in her voice. The way Michael didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. I kept asking myself, what did I do wrong? How did I raise a son who could look at his mother like that? Then guilt arrived. Uninvited, heavy. Maybe I stayed too long in his life. Maybe I didn't know when to step back. Maybe I was too present. Or not present enough. Guilt has a way of rewriting history until you're no longer sure of your own innocence. I called Michael 3 days later. It rang until voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I didn't want to sound desperate. A week passed. Then 2. I sent a simple text. "I love you. I'm here whenever you're ready." It stayed unread. That's when I realized something had shifted permanently. My home felt different without his voice echoing in it. The walls seemed farther apart. Nights stretched longer than they ever had when I was young and exhausted. I started talking to myself. Out loud. Just to hear a voice. Some mornings I would wake up forgetting for a brief second, and then the weight would return all at once. There's a special kind of grief reserved for people who are still alive. No funeral. No closure. Just absence. I stopped going out much. Neighbors asked about Michael. I smiled and said he was busy. That's what mothers do. Protect their children's image, even when they're hurting us. Weeks passed. Then months. One afternoon, I opened a drawer to look for something and found an old photograph. Michael, maybe 6 years old, sitting on my lap. His arms wrapped tightly around my neck. On the back, in childish handwriting, it said, "Me and Mom. Forever." I sat on the floor and cried like someone had died. But something else happened during those months. Pain became clarity. When you're stripped of distractions, your thoughts sharpen. You replay details you once ignored. I started remembering small things. Jessica's purse, always open. How she'd placed it near me deliberately. How quickly she accused. How calm she remained. And something else bothered me. If the money mattered so much, why didn't they call the police? Why didn't they search the car? Why was the accusation enough? One night, unable to sleep, I opened my laptop. I searched the restaurant's name. Out of curiosity more than intention. And there it was. A note at the bottom of the website. Premises under 24/7 video surveillance. My heart started racing. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. The next morning I went to the restaurant. My hands trembled as I spoke to the manager. I explained the situation calmly, without drama. He listened. Carefully. "We keep footage for 30 days, he said. It had been almost 3 weeks. He asked for the date. The time. I sat in a small office while he reviewed the recording. I couldn't watch. After a few minutes he paused the screen. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "you never touched that purse." My breath caught. He rewound. Played it again. Jessica reached into her bag. Later, when she thought no one was watching, she moved the money into her coat pocket. I stared at the screen. There it was. Clear. Undeniable. I felt no triumph. Only sadness. Because proving my innocence also meant proving something else. My son had chosen to believe a lie over me. The manager offered to give me a copy. I thanked him. I walked out holding the truth in my hands. But as I stood on the sidewalk, something strange happened. I didn't feel the urge to call Michael immediately. I didn't feel anger. I felt tired. Deeply bone-deep tired. Truth doesn't always heal the way we think it will. Sometimes it just confirms what we were trying not to see. I didn't go home after leaving the restaurant. I walked. I walked until my legs hurt and my thoughts slowed down enough to breathe. The copy of the footage sat heavy in my purse, not because of its weight but because of what it meant. Proof doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes it brings a choice. And I wasn't sure yet what I would do with it. For 3 days I said nothing. I cooked. I cleaned. I watered the plants like my life hadn't just cracked open. But something had changed inside me. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. I stopped hoping. Because hope had become a form of self-harm. On the 4th day Michael called. I almost didn't answer. But I did. "Mom," he said like nothing had happened. "Jessica and I are hosting a small gathering this weekend. Some friends. We thought you could come." The invitation felt rehearsed. Polite. Hollow. I took a breath. "I'll come," I said. "But I need to show you something." Silence. "What is it?" "You'll see." There was a pause long enough for me to imagine Jessica standing nearby, listening. "Okay," he finally said. "Saturday at 6. Saturday came. I wore no makeup. No special dress. I didn't need to impress anyone anymore. When I arrived at their apartment, Jessica opened the door. She looked surprised to see me calm. "Emily," she said. "Come in." The apartment was filled with laughter. Music. Wine glasses clinking. Michael kissed my cheek stiffly. I waited. I didn't interrupt. I didn't accuse. I didn't rush. After dinner, when the guests settled into conversation, I stood. "Michael," I said softly, "may I speak to you? Alone." Jessica tensed. "Whatever it is, you can say it here," she said quickly. I looked at her. "No," I said. "I can't." Michael nodded reluctantly and followed me into the bedroom. I closed the door. I took out the USB. "There are security cameras at the restaurant," I said. I went back. His eyes narrowed. "Mom." "Please," I said. "Just watch." We watched. In silence. Jessica reaching into her purse. The money moving hands. The moment no one noticed. Michael's face drained of color. This isn't," he whispered. "I didn't take it," I said quietly. "I never did." He sat down. Covered his face. For a moment I thought he might cry. Instead he stood up. "We don't know the full context," he said sharply. "This doesn't prove anything." I stared at him. "You watched her take it. She could have moved it for safety," he snapped. "You're making assumptions." Something broke then. Not my heart. My illusion. "I was humiliated," I said calmly. "Publicly. By you. I asked you to open your purse," he said defensively. "That's all." "You pointed at me," I replied. "You chose her word over my lifetime." He said nothing. We walked back into the living room. Jessica saw our faces. "What's going on?" she asked. Michael looked at her. "Mom thinks you took the money." Jessica laughed. "Are you serious?" "She has footage," Michael said. Her smile froze. "You went behind our backs?" she said, turning to me. "How dare you spy on us?" "I was clearing my name," I said. Jessica's voice hardened. "You're trying to destroy my marriage." Michael stepped between us. "Enough," he said. "This is getting out of hand." I looked at him one last time. "I raised you alone," I said. "I fed you when I went hungry. I defended you when the world was cruel." He looked away. "I'm not choosing sides," he said. That was the moment I understood. Not choosing is choosing. Picked up my purse. I won't come where I'm not trusted, I said. Jessica didn't stop me. Michael didn't follow. I left. That night I didn't cry. I slept. Deeply. For the first time in months. Because I had finally stopped asking to be believed. I didn't hear from Michael for a long time after that night. No apology. No explanation. No message asking if I got home safely. At first, the silence hurt like a fresh wound. Then slowly it began to feel like rest. I stopped waking up with a tight chest. Stopped checking my phone. Stopped rehearsing conversations in my head that would never happen. When someone hurts you deeply and then disappears, it forces you to do something painful. You must learn how to live without the version of them you loved. And that includes your own children. I began to build a quiet life. Mornings became my sanctuary. I woke up early, made tea, and sat by the window watching the street come alive. Mothers walking children to school. Elderly men reading newspapers on benches. Life continuing, indifferent to my grief, yet somehow comforting. I started volunteering at the community library twice a week. They needed help organizing donated books, reading to children, keeping company with seniors who came just to talk. No one there knew my story. And that felt like freedom. One afternoon, a little girl sat beside me while I read aloud. "You sound like my grandma," she said. I smiled. "She must be very wise," I replied. "She is," the girl nodded. "She says love doesn't shout. It waits." That sentence stayed with me. Months passed. Then one evening there was a knock on my door. I knew before I opened it. Michael stood there. He looked thinner. Older. Tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. "Mom," he said. I didn't invite him in. I didn't hug him. I simply waited. "I was wrong," he said quietly. I nodded. "I know." He swallowed. "Jessica and I, we're not together anymore." I said nothing. The money, she admitted it. She said she panicked. She thought you wouldn't fight back. Still I remained silent. "I lost you," he whispered. And I didn't understand the cost until it was gone. I looked at my son, not with anger, not with triumph, but with clarity. "I didn't leave you," I said. "You left me." Tears filled his eyes. "Can you forgive me?" I took a long breath. "Forgiveness," I said, "is not the same as return." He looked confused. "I love you," I continued. "That will never change. But love doesn't mean I allow myself to be diminished." He nodded slowly. "I understand." "I hope so," I said gently. "Because I raised you to understand right from wrong. Not convenience from loyalty." We stood there quietly. "I'll call you," he said. "Maybe," I replied. After he left, I didn't cry. I closed the door. And I felt whole. Some stories don't end with reunions. They end with self-respect. I am still a grandmother, even if no child calls me that yet. I am still a mother, even if my role has changed. And I am still a woman who knows her worth. If there is one thing I have learned, it is this. Love should never require you to disappear. And sometimes the bravest thing a mother can do is let go and finally choose herself.